The Dark Templar. The Templar order was founded around 1118 CE by the French king and the Archbishop of Toulouse, both members of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Hugues de Payen, a former minor noble, and his 8 companions took vows of poverty and chastity and were granted the rule of the order by Pope Honorius II. Originally intended to defend pilgrims on the road to Jerusalem, the Templars became a military order tasked with reclaiming the Holy Land from Muslim forces. Under Bernard of Clairvaux, the Templars reached the height of their military prowess, winning victories at the Siege of Lisbon in 1147 and the Battle of the River Litany in 1179. But they also suffered crushing defeats at the hands of Saladin, notably at the Battle of Hattin in 1187. This marked the beginning of the end for the Templars. Over the next 2 centuries, Muslims pushed Christians further into the region until the last Christian strongholds were lost. After the fall of Acre in 1291, the Templars retreated to Cyprus. But when King Henry VIII needed troops to suppress rebellions in England and Ireland, he dissolved the order in 1572, replacing them with the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. According to official accounts, the Grand Master of the Templars, Jacques de Molay, and several of his knights were burned at the stake for heresy. The legend goes that as Grand Master de Molay approached his death, he uttered a prophecy that within 70 years, a new order would come to destroy the Scottish, English, and French bloodlines and avenge the Templars. And so, the knightly order of the Temple of Solomon became nothing but a memory. Or so we're told. Templar Secrets Part 2. The Templars did fight in the Crusades, but not as part of the regular Christian armies. They were created to protect European pilgrims on their way to the Holy Land, and they also defended Jerusalem from attack. Unlike the hot-headed European fighters who got caught up in the frenzy of the Crusades, the Templars were calm and disciplined in battle. For example, while Christian leaders like Godfrey of Bouillon were able to seize Jerusalem in 1099, it was the Templars who kept the city from falling back into Muslim hands. In fact, thanks to their efforts, Christian pilgrims were safe to travel through the Middle East until 1187, when the Muslim leader Saladin seized Jerusalem. However, by this time, the Templars had already branched out and gained immense power in Europe and the Middle East. They owned vast estates and vineyards, and they even collected taxes on merchants passing through their territories. And this didn't sit well with the common people. Rumors began to circulate that the Templars were heretics and even devil worshippers, and many pointed to the Grand Master, Bernard of Clairvaux, as being overly ambitious and thirsty for power. This led to a meeting with Pope Innocent III, who demanded that Bernard renounce the order's wealth and return it to the Church. He agreed, but behind the scenes, the Grand Master continued to build up the Templar forces. By 1198, Bernard had built up such a large army that he was asked to help King Philip II of France conquer England. While he refused, he did lead the Templars to victory at the Battle of Lincoln in 1216. But the following year, King Philip decided to arrest the Templars on charges of heresy and treason. On Friday, October 13, 1118, over 500 Templars were arrested across France, tortured, and thrown into prison. That same year, the Pope officially dissolved the order, although the true fate of the Grand Master remains unknown. Some say he escaped to Scotland and lived out his days as a farmer. Others claim he was executed, while still others insist he survived and lives on to this very day. The truth of the matter. As a religious order, the Templars were actually quite liberal with their views on magic and paganism, especially compared to the rest of the Christian Church. In fact, they even allowed non-Christians to join the order, provided they renounced their religion and converted to Christianity. In addition, they had a strict code of ethics that forbade them from harming non-combatants and ordered them to show mercy to those who surrendered. But this tolerance wasn't just because of their beliefs. It was also because the Templars had a practical understanding of the value of different cultures. They knew that paganism had a lot to offer and that Christians could learn from other religions. In fact, many Templars studied Arabic and Jewish philosophy and theology. and they even translated some of these texts into Latin. Of course, this didn't stop the rumors. Many people couldn't understand why the Templars would associate with pagans and other non-Christians, and they accused the order of heresy and immorality. But the Templars didn't let the rumors get to them. They continued to spread their message of tolerance and acceptance, and they remained true to their beliefs until the end. The Templars today. There are many theories as to why the Templars were ultimately betrayed and destroyed, but the truth is likely a combination of factors. The Templars were an elite military order that grew in power and influence over time. They were highly trained soldiers who were feared by their enemies, but this also made them a target. The rumors of heresy and immorality were likely used by the French king to justify the suppression of the order. And once the Templars were dissolved, it was easy for the church to step in and take control of their assets. Another theory is that the Templars had become too powerful and wealthy, and this threatened the authority of the ruling class. The Templars owned vast estates and vineyards across Europe, and they even collected taxes on merchants passing through their territory. This made them a very wealthy order, but it also made them a potential threat to the nobility. As the Templars grew in power, they began to assert their independence from the crown, and this led to tensions with the French king. When Philip IV decided to arrest the Templars, he was likely motivated by a desire to seize their wealth and power. The charges of heresy and treason were likely a convenient excuse to do so. The Templars had been accused of heresy before, and these rumors had largely been ignored. But in 1307, Pope Clement V called for a general inquiry into the order, and this led to the arrest of thousands of Templars across Europe. The Templars were charged with all sorts of crimes, from heresy to sodomy, and many were tortured into confessing. The Grand Master and several other high-ranking Templars were convicted and executed, and the order was officially dissolved in 1313. The true nature of the Templars. So why are the Templars still around today? And what are they doing? The answer is that the Templars never really went away. Sure, the knightly order of the Temple of Solomon was disbanded by the Pope in 1313, but that didn't mean that the Templars stopped existing. You see, the Templars are a secret society, and they've been around for centuries. They've played a role in some of the most important events in history, but most people don't even know it. The Templars are a covenant of darkness, which means they're not like your typical secret society. They're much older, much more powerful, and much more dangerous. They're not just a bunch of guys meeting in a basement planning to overthrow the government or something. They're a serious threat to the balance of power in the world. The Templars are dedicated to protecting the innocent and fighting against evil. They're not afraid to get their hands dirty, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to win the war against the darkness. The Templars have been fighting a secret war for centuries, and they're not about to stop now. They're going to continue to protect humanity from the forces of evil, even if it means operating in the shadows. The Templars are a covenant of darkness, and they're not afraid to get their hands dirty. They're willing to do whatever it takes to protect the innocent and fight against evil. In conclusion, the Templars are a mysterious and controversial group whose origins can be traced back to the 12th century. Despite their reputation for violence and brutality, the Templars also had a strong sense of honor and camaraderie. Their ranks were open to men of all social classes, and they were fiercely loyal to one another. The Templars played a significant role in the Crusades, and their military prowess was legendary. However, they were also accused of heresy and immorality, and this led to their eventual downfall. The Templars were suppressed in 1313, but rumors persisted that they continued to exist in secret. Whether or not this is true is unknown, but it makes for an interesting theory. What do you think? Were the Templars a bunch of violent extremists, or were they honorable warriors who were simply misunderstood? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos on the mysterious and secretive world of the Templars. Thank you for watching. Thanks to my brother-in-arms for helping me put this document together. Welcome, brothers and sisters. Welcome, seekers of light. Those are the words with which every initiate to the Order of the Temple of Solomon begins his journey. But that is only the beginning, because the order is much older than anyone knows, including the initiates. Its history stretches back to a time when the veil between the worlds was thin indeed. You don't learn that history in any university. It's a history filled with secrets that could drive any man mad. What is the secret history of the Order? How old is it? Who were its founders? And how does it fit into the struggle against the darkness today? Let's start with a basic primer on the history of the Order. The official founding date of the Order is 1118, when 9 knights banded together to protect pilgrims traveling to Jerusalem. For several years, the Order remained small, a handful of knights and servants with little money or power. Then, with amazing speed, the knights gained momentum, recruiting thousands of new members and receiving enormous donations of land and money. The sudden acquisition of power and wealth has never been fully explained. Less than 2 centuries later, the Templars were disbanded, their possessions seized, although much of their treasure and their huge fleet of ships mysteriously disappeared, and their members imprisoned or executed. The Order lived on in a number of countries, however. The Portuguese and Spanish Knights of Christ, for example, was a direct descendant, and it produced a number of sailors and explorers that opened Africa and Asia to European traders. These men may have been influential in Columbus's trip to the Americas as well. Those are the facts, but there is a deeper truth. Initiates to the Order learn a different history, one that reaches back 3,000 years. The Order of the Temple of Solomon, the legend claims, dates back to the real King Solomon, the ruler of Israel during the 10th century BCE. Solomon led the Golden Age of Israel, reigning over a unified kingdom that traded with the great nation-states of the ancient age. He was also a student of matters arcane, who sought to discover the truth wherever he could, be it in pagan teachings or the practice of magic. As the legend goes, his great temple was an attempt to directly communicate with God, a place to bring the Metatron, the voice of God, to this earth. At the opening of the temple, Solomon had an epiphany. He saw that the world had been enslaved and corrupted by God's wayward servants, who had adopted the roles of angels and gods, and who slew and misled humankind at their whim. Only an enlightened world, united in mind and spirit, would be able to find God once again. Solomon shared this moment of truth with others and founded a secret order, a society that sought to set aside the differences among men and, to a lesser degree, women to one day create a united world. The seraphim, who had assumed the role of God, did not take this kindly, and the kingdom of Israel suffered for it. The order remained small and secretive, fleeing the Assyrians, Persians, and Romans, suffering under pagans, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, not least, because of their belief that there was no difference between the faiths, lesser or greater. In the 12th century, members of the order inducted the 9 knights who putatively founded the Templar order, and through them, a number of prominent members of the church and nobility. Through a combination of conversion, magic, blackmail, and bribery, the order gained a number of privileges. As the order grew, the true Templars remained hidden, an order within the order. They let the ignorant majority remain fanatically Christian, often culling the most ignorant among them by letting them die in hopeless battles against the Saracen, while quietly working for the goal of a nation of nations where all men were equals. The ambitious attempt failed miserably. In the Middle East, all efforts at forging a lasting peace between Christian and Muslim were thwarted by fanatics on both sides, often within their own order. And the servants of those who would enslave humankind eventually discovered the true purpose of the Templars, and the arrests of the Templars of France in 1307, on a Friday the 13th of all days, were all made on the same day at the same time, dawn. An amazing feat of coordination in an age of low literacy where the most common form of communication was horse messenger. The move went off so well because the adversary, the medieval version of the Combine, used its own mundane and supernatural resources. Even so, the knights were not caught wholly unprepared. The Grand Master sacrificed himself, but many knights fled or went underground, taking with them much of the wealth. As he faced death by the flames, Grand Master Jacques de Molay cursed the Pope and the King who had destroyed his order, and both died within a year of the execution. The Templars believe they are warriors in a struggle for the souls of all men. Their enemy is commonly known as the adversary, or as the Jubilites, named after the three unworthy craftsmen of Masonic legend who murdered Hiram Abiff, the mythical architect of the Temple of Solomon. The adversary is a group, or groups, whose primary goal is to keep humankind ignorant, divided, and exploited, and to rule from the shadows, manipulating the economies and politics of all world nations. They do not control everything, or even most things. Normal human beings can screw things up without any help often enough. But the Jubilites exert their influence in many ways. A little nudge here, a discredited presidential candidate there, a military coup further down the line, and suddenly a nation's government has been taken over, subverted, and bent to the adversary's will. They make sure that any great invention is perverted into a deadly weapon, that any reform movement becomes as bad as the evil it was trying to eliminate, that any new philosophy develops an ideology strong enough to justify murder or even genocide. In short, the adversary corrupts absolutely. The Templars' main goal is to counteract those plans. Their influence was enough to allow humankind to break free of the endless cycle of misery of the pre-modern era, and to develop technologies that might one day bring forth a golden age. Even then, however, the adversary was ready to twist those achievements to serve its needs, and now it embraces technology as another tool to control and mislead the masses. The ideal Templar world would have one government, elected by the people from the people, with equal rights for all. Education would be available everywhere and religion would be tolerated, but prevented from controlling the lives of unbelievers. In this world, the human race would be free to forge its own destiny, for good or ill. The Templars do not expect this utopia to happen anytime soon, but that is their goal. Their enemies, whether ruled by the Combine or not, include those who fear and hate for no good reason, people who place faith